me be the first to say happy Halloween today. What a gorgeous day, and what a venue to have. It's a beautiful view of Boston here, and we thank all of you for being here today. I think most of you have already seen the robot in action this morning during the networking period, and I want to thank Lincoln Schulman of Boston Dynamics for bringing Spot for all of you to see today. Needless to say, Boston Dynamics is one of the incredible companies here in New England developing cutting-edge robots. Today is actually the first of two New England Innovates events this fall. I hope you'll join us again in a few weeks. On November 13th, we'll be hosting a similar program exploring the use of artificial intelligence and in the transportation sector. The event will be hosted by ML Strategies here in Boston with a senior official of the Department of Transportation, Volpe Center, as the keynote speaker. You can find more information and register on our website. But this morning we're very excited to learn more about the many ways that robots are being leveraged across various sectors of our economy, and about some of the incredible research and innovation right here in our backyard. From streamlining manufacturing and distribution processes, to supporting military operations, to assisting in the delivery of cutting-edge healthcare, robots are playing a very important role in our society. And we're very proud to say that many of our New England Council members, who you'll hear from today, are on the front lines of these very exciting developments. We're very fortunate to have a member of the New England Congressional Delegation who has been a tremendous, and I underline tremendous, champion for the robotics industry on Capitol Hill. And that is our keynote speaker and very, very good friend to all of us in this room. That's Congressman Jim McGovern. The Council is incredibly grateful to two of our members for their generous support of today's program. The first is New Balance, the athletic shoe and apparel company headquarters here in Boston and with manufacturing facilities just to our north in Maine. Council is fortunate to have Amy Dow, the company's Director of Public Relations and Government Affairs, also to serve on our board. You'll hear more today about how New Balance is using robotics in their manufacturing facilities. And second is Worcester Polytechnic Institute, or what we refer to as the WPI. WPI was, in fact, I believe, the first university to offer a bachelor's degree in robotics engineering, and one of the first to offer graduate degrees in this field. Their faculty, one of whom you'll hear from today, are conducting cutting-edge research in this field while training the next generation of robotic workforce. We're also honored to be joined by several representatives of WPI, including the Vice President and Vice Provost for Research Innovation, Bogdan Vernesco, who is going to introduce our keynote speaker. One quick housekeeping note before I hand it over to Bogdan. You'll see on your table a QR code that you can scan that will bring you to the agenda for today's program, as well as the bios for all of our speakers. So with that, I thank again all of you for joining us today, and now I'll invite Bogdan to the podium.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be here today. I'd first like to thank Jim Brett from the New England Council for bringing us together to discuss the future of robotics and the vital role New England plays in this ever-evolving industry. As all of us know, the Council is the oldest regional business association. It will be 100 years old next year. And it has been doing a terrific job in promoting economic growth, support federal public policies on important issues that are facing New England. I was sharing with Jim earlier that I think this is a jewel of an association, and he said, say that at the microphone. So imagine a future where robotics are woven seamlessly into every aspect of our life. In many ways, that future is already here. We started with robotic vacuums. We are now driving self-driving cars. We have autonomous helpers at the grocery stores. We have surgical robots. And these are just a few examples of our everyday lives. But there's much more on the horizon, and the potential of robotics to transform how we live and work is only beginning to unfold. Worcester Polytechnic Institute is proud to be at the forefront of robotics education and research, and as Jim mentioned, WPI has had the first of its kind robotics engineering degree undergraduate degree in the nation, and one of the first to offer graduate degrees in robotics engineering. We have been researching, developing, and implementing this technology and its impact on society for decades. Our robotics engineering programs are comprehensive, preparing engineers and researchers across diverse fields where robotics is making a transformative impact from manufacturing to transportation to education to healthcare and search and rescue, to just name a few. WPI alumni have become leaders in robotics industry, founding startups and pioneering advanced technologies. Many of our graduates have helped build companies and developed cutting-edge solutions for autonomous navigation, robotic arms for precision manufacturing, and intelligent drones. In healthcare, for instance, assistive robots are now helping to save lives. At WPI's Practice Point, a collaborative center for prototyping and evaluating cutting-edge medical devices, we work with a consortium of academics, industry experts, and healthcare professionals to develop technologies that empower doctors and nurses to diagnose patients with unprecedented precision in care. To sustain this growth, we need to engage and inspire the next generation of engineers and innovators. Starting in K-12, robotics education plays a crucial role in breaking down barriers and making STEM accessible. Low-cost robotics platforms like the XRP, as well as programs such as FIRST Robotics, VEX Robotics, are invaluable for reaching students early, nurturing their curiosity, and setting them on a path to meaningful careers in technology. Finally, to maintain America's global leadership in robotics, we need federal support for these educational and innovation-driven initiatives. Leaders like Congressman Jim McGovern recognize both the opportunities and challenges of the robotics revolution, and their backing is vital to keeping our nation at the forefront. Congressman McGovern's efforts reflect a sustained commitment to leveraging education and technology as cornerstones for this region's growth and innovation. He has been a strong advocate for federal funding, particularly in STEM fields. He has consistently pushed for investment in NIH and NSF to support cutting-edge research and innovation in higher education institutions. Furthermore, he is known for his commitment to making college more affordable and accessible, backing policies to increase Pell Grants and other federal student aid programs to support low and middle income students pursuing higher education. He has also championed programs aimed at expanding STEM education access for underrepresented groups to build more inclusive pathways in technology-related fields, addressing both educational and professional opportunities. He also recognizes the importance of collaboration between higher education institutions, industry, state, and federal government, and has supported initiatives that facilitate these partnerships, particularly in sectors like biotechnology, advanced manufacturing, information technology, to foster workforce development and drive economic growth. We are especially grateful for the Congressman's work as co-chair of the Congressional Robotics Caucus. The support for innovation in robotics is critical to driving advancements that will benefit both our region and the country. Thank you again to the Council for hosting this essential conversation on robotics and innovation. And with that, I'm honored to introduce Congressman James McGovern, a true advocate for our industry and our future.
Well, thank you, Dr. Renescu, for that kind introduction, and I can hardly wait to hear what I'm going to say. And I want to also thank Jim Brett and the entire staff and team at the New England Council for putting this event on and hosting us all here today. You know, one of the things that I've come to appreciate over the years is the role that the New England Council plays in so many important economic development initiatives in this state and in this region. And sometimes we don't say that enough, but it is important to convene people and to focus people and to bring, you know, everybody who has a stake in a particular issue together in the same room and make all the connections, and that's what the New England Council does. I also want to thank New Balance, and I want to thank WPI for sponsoring this event. I have the privilege of representing WPI in Congress, and every time I walk onto that campus, I learn something new. They're on the cutting edge of everything, and it is one of the finest colleges and universities, not only in our region, but in our country and in the world. And people from all over the world attend WPI, and so I feel I'm very blessed, and it's great that you all are here this morning because there's nothing going on. Everybody looks so calm and cool and collected. Somebody asked me, how do I sleep at night? I said, I sleep like a baby. I get up every 2 hours screaming. Anyway, so it's good to talk about something other than what's happening in the elections. But it is a pleasure to join so many of you today, business leaders, innovators, scientists, advocates, and educators, you know, all here to discuss a topic of growing urgency: how America can create a national strategy to guide the future of robotics. Look, a lot of people might not think that robotics and politics have anything to do with each other, but we know they do. Of course they do, right? First of all, on the political level, on the governmental level, I mean, we need a vision. We need a vision. We need to prioritize this issue, but we need a vision of how we're going to proceed. We need a positive vision for the role that government can play in harnessing new technologies and ensuring that they benefit everybody in this country, not just those at the top. But we ought to be having that discussion now. And second, we need some leadership. We need leadership in the academic community. We need leadership in the business community, but we need leadership at the political level. It's not just who's sitting in the Oval Office or who's in charge of Congress, but we need a government that elevates leaders throughout the country who have something to say about this issue. A government that elevates the workers and the managers and the entrepreneurs and the small businesses who are being impacted by automation. A government that utilizes the brain power at our colleges and universities. You know, and sometimes, even though that seems like a no-brainer, sometimes it's hard for a government to reach out and to understand that we don't know everything, and that we need to listen and pay attention to what's happening at our universities. We need a government that's willing to invest in research and development and in infrastructure to be able to move this issue forward. And a government that brings everybody to the table and seeks to solve problems, you know, and not just call people names or play the blame game. So you know, that's kind of what's at stake in the election, quite frankly, right? And I know some of you might be saying, "Oh God, he's talking about the election again," right? But the fact of the matter is, elections do matter, and if we want a robust investment by government in certain areas, we need to make sure we're electing people who will do that and who will work with us and who understand that there's a future in robotics. Robotics and automation are transforming our economy, our workplaces, and our lives. But with this opportunity comes responsibility, particularly to American workers. We need to make sure that we are not displacing workers, but we are actually reskilling workers and giving them the tools to help this economy advance. And it's important that we have that conversation so we're not fighting you know, with those who say that you're only trying to replace my job and you're trying to save costs, and those who understand and see the potential of robotics in the future. You know, our economy, as our economy evolves, so we must have a commitment to protecting people who drive it forward. Look, my first idea of robots came from the Jetsons. I don't know how many of you are old enough to remember the Jetsons, but yes, right? It was great. I wish they still had it on. But anyway, you know, that's where it was. That was an incredible show. It's where robots did everything for people, and daily life involved flying cars. Boy, wouldn't that be nice, right? But what was once science fiction has become science fact. And by the mid-20th century, robots evolved from concepts to real tools that revolutionized our manufacturing. From assembly lines in automotive plants to surgical suites and medical labs, robotics boosted productivity and safety, taking over some of the most dangerous and tedious jobs. At least at first, the United States led the world in robotic manufacturing innovation. But as technology advanced, so did the reach and the complexity of automation, bringing new challenges. And you know, again, we need to make sure that the focus is in on producing an economy that lifts us all up. I've been in conversations with people, with workers who say that, you know, the real motivation behind automation and behind robotics is basically to help the people at the top make more profits and basically eliminate the need for more workers. We all know, those who are working in this field, that that's not true. But there's a perception out there that we need to deal with, and we should deal with it sooner rather than later so we don't run into any speed bumps along the way. You know, I think that you know, recognizing the growing importance of robotics, the Obama administration launched the National Robotics Initiative in 2011, directing various agencies to advance research and development in the field. This initiative, coupled with the creation of the Congressional Caucus on Robotics, helped the U.S. regain some footing in manufacturing and created a pathway to growth in the robotics-driven sectors. By the end of 2013, the manufacturing sector finally saw some positive growth for the first time since 1999, and the National Robotics Initiative proved that government could leverage robotics to enact economic change. And then, you know, around that time, some of the wonderful people in this room approached me about co-leading the Congressional Caucus on Robotics. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know a lot about robotics. I didn't go to WPI. And I'm a member of 1,000 different caucuses. 99.9% of them don't do a goddamn thing. They just exist. And so the politicians can come back and say, I'm on this caucus or that caucus. I'm on the caucus to, you know, save little puppies, or I'm on the caucus to, you know, make the world safer for whatever, right? So I'm like, I said I'll do it, but I want to make this a meaningful caucus. I want to make this something that will help steer policy, that will help bring to Washington innovators and people who are on the cutting edge of robotics technology, and to help us try to figure out, like, what are the next steps? Where do we need to invest the funding? You know, how do we develop a national strategy that makes sense? So I've learned about how important this issue is and how vital it is that we address it with a national strategy that actually looks at this issue in a holistic way. And I think that's, again, why I'm glad that the New England Council is taking a leadership role here. Because sometimes we look at things in a very narrow way, and we just look at our little piece of the pie, and we don't put all the pieces together, and then we don't make the progress that we need to make. But you know, we see the rise of AI, and that is moving very, very quickly. And I think the need for a comprehensive strategy is even more urgent. You know, I delivered the commencement address at WPI earlier this year, and I spoke at length about some of the moral questions posed by artificial intelligence, including how to harness it for good, because the potential is incredible, right? but you also can see the dangers. We've moved from a world where robots simply perform tasks to one where they can generate ideas and respond respond to feedback. Robots can now speak, code, problem solve, and even create capabilities that make them incredibly powerful. And not to sound cliche here, but with great power comes great responsibility. And fortunately, in 2023, President Biden issued a comprehensive executive order to advance a coordinated federal government-wide approach to govern the safe and responsible use of AI. Remember earlier when I said that elections matter? Well, because of President Biden's executive order, we now have 8 focus areas in which the government will develop national guidelines on AI. These include making sure that systems are safe, innovative, and collaborative, all while protecting workers, users, and their privacy and civil liberties. So I think we need to do the same thing with advanced robotics. We need a national strategy that charts a similar pathway forward for the robotics industry. And I think it's important for the co-chairs of the Robotics Caucus to be united, not only in our request for a national strategy, but also on the main issue areas where we want the strategy to address. The co-chair of the caucus is a Republican named Bob Latta. He and I are political opposites. We probably couldn't even agree on what to have for lunch, right? But we agree that there is a future in robotics. We agree that we need to pay more attention and there needs to be more investment and that there needs to be a national strategy. And here's some things that I think we ought to consider. First, bringing manufacturing jobs back to America, especially here in New England, requires strategic government support. We can't just incentivize those at the top. We need a robust system of support for all types of manufacturers, particularly the small and mid-sized businesses that are the backbone of the American economy. Programs like the Manufacturing Extension Partnership, MEP, including Mass MEP, are essential to achieving this. These organizations provide small manufacturers with technical assistance, training, and access to advanced technology, helping them integrate robotics into their operations sustainably and responsibly. According to a recent Mass MEP survey, 55% of respondents are either implementing or evaluating automation at their facilities. This shows how vital it is to ensure that small manufacturers have the support and resources that they need to adopt new technologies without displacing workers or destabilizing communities. But this transition requires more than just technology. It demands a skilled workforce. So the next thing the national strategy needs to do, in my opinion, is invest in workforce development programs to equip workers with the skills they need to succeed in an increasingly automated economy. Through public-private partnerships, expanded training programs, and targeted education initiatives, we can prepare American workers for the high-tech jobs of the future. We don't have that skilled workforce right now. We need to develop it, and we need to develop it with a sense of urgency because things are moving very, very quickly. And as we move forward with advanced manufacturing, we need to ensure that small and mid-sized manufacturers are not left behind. They deserve the same access to robotics and automation opportunities that the larger companies enjoy. A competitive American manufacturing ecosystem depends on a connected, innovative supply chain where businesses of all sizes can access technology, partner with research institutions, and foster a culture of responsible growth. Finally, robotics and automation aren't just about efficiency. They're about our nation's competitiveness and economic stability. In a global economy where technological advances are accelerating, New England manufacturers, from small shops to mid-sized firms, must have access to the resources that will enable them to thrive in this robotic age. And as we develop our national robotics strategy, it is crucial to foster an environment where innovation thrives, but where safeguards for workers and communities are firmly in place. We need strong policies that allow American entrepreneurs, engineers, and manufacturers to lead the world in robotics while ensuring that these breakthroughs contribute to a fairer, more inclusive economy for all. So at the national level, I'm going to advocate for a future where robotics go hand in hand with ethical guardrails, worker protections, and shared prosperity. I will champion support for programs like MEP that help manufacturers modernize responsibly. I will work with the Robotics Caucus to advance an all-of-government response that addresses all the various issues involved with robotics. I will fight for research dollars for our educational institutions so that they can continue to be on the cutting edge. And we're going to need to rely on your expertise. You know, I tell people this all the time, and it may come as a shock to you, but intelligence is not a prerequisite for serving in Congress. And to be honest with you, there are not a lot of engineers or people, you know, who are academics or who really know a lot about robotics other than the fact, you know, that we're developing it. And sometimes we're not even sure how best to help. Where should those investment dollars go? Where is the, you know, what needs to be done first? And are we investing in the worker training programs that are most effective for what all of you need? And so I hope, like, when, you know, the New England Council comes down to Washington, that maybe part of that focus can be on having some meetings with the new administration and some key leaders in Congress about, you know, what a legislative strategy looks like, what a regulatory strategy looks like. You know, what would be most helpful for the new administration to focus on. And I look at it this way. I mean, Massachusetts, is not a gigantic state, and you know, we're not known for a place to get our energy from, or I mean, our natural resource here is our brain power, is our colleges and universities primarily, and you know, in many respects, that's why the biotech industry took off in Massachusetts, is because of our natural resource here. I think the same thing with robotics and even AI. I mean, we have the brain power here. We also need to make sure that that brain power is developing ideas that can be manufactured here, that create jobs here. And so, so the issue is not just what the federal government could do. In the short term, it's what the state government could do too. What incentives can the state provide for companies to locate here? You know, whether it's tax incentives or outright, you know, investments. And you know, and on the issue of the discussion on, you know, worker displacement, I was meeting with Dr. Bueller earlier, and he's reminding me that in the medical field, the developments in robotics is actually saving jobs in the medical field. The people right now are getting exhausted and are leaving the field and going into other areas, and so there's a need, you know, to keep on trying to get more and more people to work in the field. But this is a way actually to make workers' lives better in that field. Not to mention the cutting edge breakthroughs that we read about every day in the medical field. So look, everyone here knows I'm no engineer, but what I am good at is getting folks together to solve problems and to advance good ideas. And so I want to work with the people here who are working in this field in various capacities, and let's figure out, you know, not just the national strategy, but what we can do here in New England to make sure that we are the focal point. This is the place where everyone wants to come, not only to develop good ideas, but to actually manufacture things, to make things here. And so I will continue to work with all of you, and I think I speak for our entire delegation. I mean, we see this as, you know, the next kind of biotech phenomenon. This is where the jobs of the future are going to come, and we just need to be very aggressive right now about creating a climate where they come here. So let me end there, and thank you very much for your attention.
We have a couple of minutes for the congressman to entertain some questions. We have Sam from our office who has the microphone. So if you do have a question for the congressman, just identify yourself and then you can ask the question. So We have a show of hands. Please, not all at once, just, yes, sir. Okay. Just put the mic in.
Hello, David Rogers from DECA. Thank you so much for your remarks today. I really appreciate the perspective that you shared on developing a national strategy for robotics and all the workforce components that would incorporate. What do you think is the opportunity to shape something like that for the next administration?
Well, it depends who it is. No, look, we have to, right? And I think, I'm obviously hoping that the next president will be Vice President Harris, but I mean, we've already had some preliminary conversations with some of the people in this administration about, actually fleshing out a strategy and bringing people in, to make sure we're getting it right. Hillary Clinton used to say it takes a village. She's right, but it takes a plan. And we can't be directionless on this, right? Because we need to be able to focus where the investments are going to be with agencies that right now have existing funds that could be put toward research and development, but we may need additional funds. What agencies do we need at the table? What departments do we need at the table? What role does Congress play? We're going to be doing a tax bill. I mean, are there things that we ought to be elevating that should be included as part of a tax bill? What should appropriations look like? All that kind of stuff. So yeah, I'm hopeful that I think there's an eagerness to kind of latch on to the next big wave, and I think people understand that this is kind of that next big wave. How do we better integrate our policy with what's being researched and developed at our universities and our colleges? So I'm really hopeful about that. But I also, while we're developing the national strategy, we needed a regional strategy. Because sometimes it takes a while for the national strategy to get flushed out. In the meantime, we got to figure out what our plan is here in New England.
Other quick? Mark?
My name is Mark Manuel. I have a company called Industrial Marketing. Jim, everyone talks about workforce development, and there's some great work that's being done on that. But there's millions of jobs open in manufacturing, and there's no way we're going to be able to hire a way out of that. So clearly, robotics is an important part of that. I ask my clients all the time, how many employees do you think you're going to need 10 years from now to do the work that you're doing today? My question is this: research and development. That tax credit expired a few years ago, and a lot of my clients in this space could really use help. They're waiting, wondering, should I invest my money in that robot right now? Unless there's a clear ROI, it's waiting, and that's slowing down a lot of manufacturing. So, curious what your take is for getting something done after the election on that.
So I'm not sure the likelihood of getting something done in the next month and a half. I mean, or 2 months. But certainly next year we have to do a tax package. And my hope is that Congressman Neal will be the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, and then we can just go see him and say we need this. I think he's very much interested in this, and so we have an opportunity to shape a tax package that will, actually benefit the very companies that you say. So, I am hopeful. I will also tell you, what I'm a little bit worried about. Again, I'm not trying to get political here, but I'm concerned about the lack of focus by some on this area, and the talk about increased tariffs all around the world, because that could have a really damaging and chilling impact on this as well. So, with costs going up and all kinds of trade wars happening, I don't think that that's good for our economy either. But I am confident that if Congressman Neal is our Ways and Means Chairman, we will not only have a seat at the table, but we will advance what you're talking about.
Right here.
Hi, Holly Yanko, UMass Lowell. I want to ask you, in your role as co-chair of the robotics group in Congress, when you talk to your colleagues, do they understand the difference between robotics and AI? And if not, what can we do to help you? Because there's a lot of funding for AI, and you mentioned the National Robotics Initiative, which is fantastic, but it hasn't been renewed.
Right.
So what can we do to help?
Well, again, we want to build this caucus. We want to educate people. I mean, there is a relationship between AI and robotics and that we can all appreciate, but they're different, right? Look, it's a matter of actually engaging members of Congress, one by one, about what's happening in our community and what's happening in the country, and talking to them about being more interested in this. I'm not sure how many. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I'm in Massachusetts. I've had a number of meetings with some people in this room, and I've seen some robot, like up close and personal, that have been developed here in Massachusetts. But I'm not sure whether every member of the delegation has had the briefings that I've had. I'm not sure that in New Hampshire or Rhode Island or in other communities, maybe some of you have already engaged the members of Congress and the senators, but I'm not sure that there's been a lot of kind of one-on-one talk about this. And about what the needs are. So I think if you want to know how you educate people, we got to get in the room with them. And we got to tell them that here's what's happening, and here's what we need, and here's what we're afraid of, and don't screw this up, and and pass this, and let's get going. But we do need an education effort. The caucus, my hope, will be a place where we're going to host briefings with people. Some of you in this room will come down and brief members of Congress, and more importantly, and just as importantly, is briefing members of Congress or briefing staff members, because they know more than members of Congress do. So,
The robotic caucus, is that going to be bipartisan?
yeah, it's bipartisan. Yeah.
That's important. Yes, sir.
Thanks. So Reggie Jean, I'm with the New England Education Opportunity Association and the trio of program programs at Boston University. I like your analogy in terms of the Massachusetts being the natural resources are not strong, but the brain power is strong in Massachusetts. But some of the natural resource is not tapped everywhere. So Boston, Worcester, kids in those areas are not necessarily going into futures that will lead them to make decisions or be in companies that do AI, that do robotics. What role can the folks here or in Congress play to make sure that there's more tapped resources from city kids?
So, and I know WPI is already doing this in Worcester. I mean, they have relationships with our local school systems and introducing young people to all kinds of new ideas and getting them interested. We need people to be interested. We need to spark the interest early on, so we can get people who want to do what is necessary to be equipped to be leaders in this field. So I think there needs to be more integration in our kind of public education system, and we need to expand some of the programs that are currently in place that are reaching out to kids, especially kids who are in high-risk neighborhoods who have the potential to succeed here. But there's a way to do this, right? There's a way to do this, but it requires all hands on deck. I always tell people, for those of you who haven't been to Worcester in 20 years, Worcester today is a very different city than it was 20 years ago. And in large part is because we kind of got our act together, and we started treating our colleges and universities not as separate islands that have nothing to do with the community, but as potential collaborators to make real economic development happen. And my friends at WPI here, and I'm not doing a commercial for them, but I'm going to give you an example of one of the things that we did. There was a neighborhood near WPI that was basically almost abandoned. Brownfields, empty factories, no activity at all. And we had a meeting with the then president of WPI, the city manager of Worcester, some local business people about how do we resuscitate this neighborhood. And we ended up developing what we call the Gateway Park Project, which, engineering, bioengineering, all kinds of stuff is happening there. And we get some federal money to clean up brownfields and to invest in infrastructure. WPI invested some of their capital in it. The city invested some capital in it. The state invested some capital in it. Long story short, the area is alive, with all kinds of innovative new businesses and ideas that are going on. Mass MEP played a huge role in all of that, right? And, but no one entity could have done it on its own, right? And I think the same thing here on robotics. It's like, we need a lot of people at the table, even people who are not doing the research and development. We need people to help us identify the space and ready the space that is necessary. We need the tax incentives. We need a whole bunch of stuff. I think we can do it. I mean, we know what to do. We just have to have the political will to do it. And I think this is the next big wave here. And you're going to hear from some people who know what they're talking about up here, about some of the cutting edge things that they're working on. I mean, we're already moving rapidly forward. But we just want to make sure, for the purposes of this breakfast here, that New England becomes the focal point of all this activity. I'll just close with this. One of the good things about our delegation is that we're all well placed on key committees. I talked to you about Richie Neal being the chairman of the Ways and Means Committee, hopefully again. I hopefully will be chairman of the Rules Committee, right? Nothing goes to the House floor that doesn't come through the Rules Committee. So we get to change things, add things, do whatever the hell we want to do with it before it gets to the floor. So we are well positioned, with your guidance to help make sure we're getting the federal government to do what it's supposed to do to make this, to make robotics a bigger part of our future. And I want you to work with me. I want you to call me. If you have some good ideas that you want me to share with my colleagues, we want you to come to DC. We will do a robotics caucus briefing. We will do multiple briefings. We'll do whatever you want. But we need to get serious about making this a reality here.
So Congressman, is it safe to say you're going to be staying in Congress?
Well, if I get reelected, yeah, right.
There's an article in the newspaper today that he's being mentioned for a cabinet position.
So there's a group of people who would like me to be Secretary of Agriculture, believe it or not. I'm actually on the Agriculture Committee as well. I'm on the Agriculture Committee because I represent a district in the 2nd Congressional District, believe it or not, that has the most farms of any other district in Massachusetts. But I'm also on the Agriculture Committee because I do a lot of work on food insecurity and hunger. And all the major nutrition programs are under USDA. So I'm not sure how Midwestern states would look at me, but let me just say this. What I do think is that the next Secretary of Agriculture, whoever he or she may be, needs to focus on issues like agriculture that exists in New England. We're not mega farms, we're small and medium-sized farms. They're a big part of our economy, and they're a big part of our food system. And one of the things we learned during COVID is that local food systems are important. And then the other thing we ought to focus on is how do we end hunger and food insecurity in this country. We live in the richest country in the history of the world, and there are 47 million people who don't know where the next meal is going to come from. I'm ashamed of that as a member of Congress. And we got Biden to do the 2nd ever White House Conference on Hunger, Nutrition, and Health. The first one was in 1969, and out of that came SNAP and WIC, and we're trying to figure out how we do this. And I'll end with this. I mean, hunger is a political condition. I mean, we have the money, we have the food. I mean, we waste 40% of what we grow and produce, right? We have the food, we have the infrastructure, we don't have the political will. And for those who are concerned about exploding healthcare costs and the deficit, you should be really involved in what we're trying to do on this issue, because hunger costs. Kids who go to school hungry don't learn. And I applaud the Mass Legislative Delegation for passing universal free meals for everybody, but then we have the summer months, and then we have people of all ages, and then we have people who don't have access to decent food, and they end up getting chronic diseases that explode our healthcare costs. So we're trying to not only get the government to make sure that we have safety net programs that actually work, we're also trying to get our doctors and our hospitals to change the way they do medicine. I mean, you can become a doctor and never have to take a course in nutrition in this country. We ought to have food prescriptions. We ought to be able to make sure that people are getting what they need. We did a summit in New York City before the Biden summit. And my staff says don't mention this because he's indicted, but it was hosted by Mayor Adams of New York. And I asked him, why are you interested in any of this stuff? And he said to me that, he says, one is, he said, I had diabetes, really severely. And my doctors basically told me, you picked a short straw. Take your medicine and, good luck, but you could potentially lose your eyesight and you may have amputations as you get older. And I went to very good doctors, and that's what they told me. And he said, then I happened to be in the company of some other doctors who I explained my situation, and they told me they could manage or reverse my condition through nutrition. And he did. And he said, so I'm interested in this because not only is my life going to be improved, but I'm going to save you a boatload of money. If I can't work, you're going to have to help me. If I'm going to need multiple amputations, I'm going to have to be looking to government help to pay for that. So, so in any event, it's a long answer to the agriculture question, but the point of the matter is that's another issue I feel very passionately about and where we need to focus. And we need to get our great hospitals here to move faster in embracing nutrition as a way to not only prevent you from becoming a patient, but to treating you and curing you. So anyway.
I know you have to leave, but Brendan, did you have a quick question from Boston
Super quick,
Dynamics?
thank
He
you.
brought Spot with him.
I thank you for bringing Spot.
Yeah, glad. It was always fun. So Brendan Schulman from Boston Dynamics, thank you very much for your engagement on these issues and your vision for national strategy. I really just wanted to underscore the urgency, and particularly because China is moving very rapidly with government strategy and support to try to dominate the robotics field. So everything we already have here, academia, industry, end users, is at risk in terms of international competition. And that's really the driver, as you put it, of manufacturing across the board, to get the technologies that are making jobs safer and more efficient. So I'm wondering your thoughts on thinking about China being part of the competitive threat that we need to address in the policies and legislation so that we can all benefit from robotics.
Yeah, no, and that's an incredibly important point, right? The urgency is that other countries are moving ahead, and they're moving ahead very rapidly. They see the potential here. I think we have, the better universities, the better colleges, the better innovators here in the United States. We need to make sure they have the tools to be able to succeed. And the best way to combat, China in terms of economic competition is not by more tariffs and and yelling and screaming and pointing fingers. It's by investing in things here and making more things here, and we just have to have a commitment to do that. And so if we don't, we will lose out. But I know I'm feeling good about all this. I feel like we're going to do this. I feel like come next year, you're going to see some concrete steps in the right direction. We're going to be working more with all of you, and we're going to develop that national strategy. And at the same time, we're going to be developing a regional strategy because we love this country, but I'm kind of selfish. I want more happening here. That's all. So, all right. Thank you.
We want to thank you. Congressman McGovern, not just for being here today, but being so accessible and approachable to all of us in the New England Council family. He's always available, looking for input, and so he appreciates your support as well. But he is just somebody that's universally respected, both sides of the aisle in Congress, and that's why we need more people like Jim McGovern to get things done in Washington. So I just want to say thank you to him once again. Also, I want to thank Emily Heisig and Mariah Healy for planning this innovation series program. They're not easy to do, but obviously they've done a great job here. It's been flawless, but and a lot of preparations have gone into it. So those two I want to thank. The esteemed panelists can come to the stage. Put the mic on. Make sure your mic is on. They're going to have Tom Ryden, Executive Director, Mass Biotics.
And through many efforts, WPI and others recruiting the congressman to chair the caucus. It's amazing to have him. his vision, his guidance. He's talked a lot about the National Robotics Strategy. The U.S. is one of the few countries that does not have a national robotics strategy. I'm heading off to Singapore next week and to meet with their NRP, their National Robotics Program, which runs their strategy. And their strategy ties all of the different branches of the government together to understand where robotics is going and how it's going to impact each division or each section of their government. We don't have that here. Hopefully with Congressman McGovern's help, we'll be able to start to develop that type of strategy here in this country. And so we're excited for him and his support of the robotics community. So excited to have some great panelists here to talk more about robotics, obviously one of my favorite subjects. And they all bring diverse views from their perspectives of the industry, but I think they all share the passion and the excitement that robotics is bringing to their fields and the broader community. So I want to start with Sarah. So first, Sarah, thank you for New Balance for sponsoring, which is great. And also, for those of you who don't know, New Balance has 5 factories in New England. 2 in Massachusetts, 2 in Maine, and a new one starting soon in New Hampshire. And for those of you who also don't know, New Balance makes sneakers. Most of those sneakers are made in Vietnam. They are not made in the US. But New Balance manufactures here. So I think robotics is going to be an important element to allow them to continue to do that. So Sarah, can you talk a little bit about how New Balance is utilizing robotics?
Yes, so our team, is this working here? Our team is a new team. We've been around for about 2.5 years, and we focus on robotics for our manufacturing facilities specifically. So we have projects in 3 different areas. One is on manufacturing of the footwear itself, and using robotics to do that. One is for one area is material handling things, so moving things around the factory, in and out of the building, stuff like that. And then the third area is for quality, so using different tools to look at the quality of the footwear and the steps, along the way to make it. We focus, our goals are to improve safety, quality, throughput, and cost in the factory. And so far, we've really focused on kind of them in that order. We know it's going to take some time to get projects going to take advantage of the throughput and cost advantages that robotics can provide. So we've really tried to pick projects where we can get advantages in safety and quality first, and hope that the return on our investment comes as things mature.
Great. So Carlo, moving to you. And again, thank you WPI for sponsoring. I know that there's many different areas within WPI in terms of research for robotics. You're focusing on swarm. So can you talk to us a little bit about both what swarm is for the folks who don't understand that technology, and then how that's going to impact the greater robotics community?
Absolutely. So swarm robotics is a really cool concept. It takes inspiration from the collective intelligence of natural systems. So think about insects, think about birds that are flocking together, and fish. So they're all individuals that think for themselves, but at the same time they're part of a community. And so they are individually not particularly smart. Think about ants, for example, or bees or termites. But when you put them together, they do incredibly complex things. Like, for example, finding food in places where, in a gigantic environment that is dangerous to them, and then bring it to the nest. In the case of ants, they can even farm if they need to, so to make food internally inside the nest. So all I'm saying is this incredible complexity comes from interactions. Why do we care about this? Because building robots with these capabilities is nothing short of revolutionary. The difficult thing, though, is that this is intelligence in a way that we don't normally experience. I mean, we are one in ourselves, so robots tend to be individual robots to us. Thinking in collectives at this level is very, very difficult. And one of the things that is difficult is understanding how things will go wrong when you have so many things interacting at the same time. Financial markets are a good example of things going wrong and nobody being in control and not understanding when, the next big crisis will happen. So Swarm Robotics is interesting because it's going to give us technology for all of those applications in which the environment is huge and the robots are tiny. So, for example, agriculture, the ocean, space exploration, nanotechnology, stuff like that, construction. It's also cool because if we build artificial swarm systems, then we can understand natural swarm systems. So maybe we can understand a little better how to, make our society better, make financial markets more stable, and stuff like that.
Great. And for those of you who have not done a swarm, one of the challenging things with swarms is actually battery management. If you're turning on 100 robots and you start turning on the number one, by the time you get to 100, the first one's dead with a battery. So a lot of work to be done, and Carlo and his group are doing amazing stuff in that. Martin, let me turn to you. J&J is obviously known as an innovator within the medical and healthcare space. I think there's many different areas. Again, you're looking at automation, certainly within surgery. Can you talk to me about how you see robotics use in surgery and in other areas that J&J is working on?
Yeah, I'd love to. Thank you for the question, Tom. First of all, great to be here. My great pleasure. What's better than... actually, is my mic on? Yes. What could be better than talking about robotics and a beautiful day like this? And I want to thank the New England Council and Congressman McGovern to invite me here. And it's great you join the panelists. So yeah, I'm Martin Buehler. I have the privilege to be Vice President and Distinguished Fellow for Robotics at Johnson & Johnson MedTech. So I get to work on some really cool robotics. For example, our robotic-assisted bronchoscopy system that helps fight lung cancer. Also, our brand new major system that does soft tissue robotics, again, robotic-assisted laparoscopy. It's going to be really impactful. It's not on the market yet. And also I get to advise our company across our business units on robotics, and also help with strategy, and also do various outreach activities and innovation activities. So moving on in terms of overall, as we've heard already, we live in a really golden age of robotics. We're going to see amazing transformations that are happening across technology, and especially in healthcare. In fact, we believe, and I believe myself, that in the next 10 years, we'll see more transformation in healthcare than we've seen in the last 100 years. And it's not, and patients are waiting. There's a great urgency. And Johnson & Johnson has been in surgical robotics for 135 years. In fact, we started with a big bang of innovation. Some of you may not know, innovation in terms of sterile surgery. This was at a time after the American Civil War, when actually most of the folks that died from the American Civil War, they died of disease and infection. So Johnson & Johnson was the first company that mass-produced sterile surgical supplies and really clocked in the first really revolution in surgical robotics, in surgical practice. And we have been leading the field since then. So today we're focusing on robotic surgery. There's a big transition. As a company, we're supporting open, laparoscopic, and robotic surgery. But of course, we want our procedures to be more personalized, less invasive, and smarter overall. So that's where the robotics comes in. So transition from open to laparoscopic, and laparoscopic to robotic. And robotic typically means in soft tissue, robotic-assisted laparoscopy. And robotics is really transformational technology. It provides the surgeon with an enhancement that gives them better access, much better instruments. They can suture much better. They have much greater visualization with amazing embedded views of the surgical field. So the outcomes can be much better by improving the surgeon skills. And specifically the kind of system that we already have in the market, I mentioned already, our robotic-assisted bronchoscopy system. Lung cancer is a big deal, as you all know. #1 cancer killer worldwide. In the US, about 150,000 people die every year of lung cancer. And the key really is early diagnosis and treatment. And that's where the robot comes in. It does a much better job than manual bronchoscopy to get to smaller and smaller nodules at harder and harder to reach places that are not reachable with manual bronchoscopy. That's often a wait and see, where it's like, oh, you have a suspicious nodule, but it's too small, we can get to it, come back in 6 months. So that could be really bad news. So with the robotic assistance, we can get to these nodules much earlier and really make a huge dent in lung cancer by diagnosing, doing a biopsy, and then treatment much earlier. We also have a very impactful system in orthopedics. We have a system that helps orthopedic surgeons to do partial and total knee replacements. And those can then be done customized to the specific individual anatomy. And that's a really growing field in terms of us as a society. We're getting older as a society, we're getting heavier, so there's a much increased demand for knee surgeries. So overall, yeah, and also going back to Congresswoman McGovern's comments on nutrition, I really totally embrace that. We're sort of trying to fix the back end of healthcare issues. How great would it be if most of those people wouldn't even come in and have those issues by eating well and having great nutrition in the first place, and having no obesity or diabetic issues. So to conclude, again, robotics has a really important role to play in healthcare, and it's going to enhance the surgeon skill and lead to much better outcomes.
Great, thank you. So Holly, turning to you, again, UMass also does amazing work in robotics in many different areas. We can talk about the Nerve Center, we can talk about the work that you do to support NATIC and other defense operations. But I really want to touch about what I think is a really critical area is that human-robot interaction. Because as we've all been talking about, robots are now going to be coming in our lives in many different ways, and how do we work with those robots is going to be critical. So can you talk a little bit about your work there?
Sure. So for me, all of robotics is human-robot interaction, and I boldly declare this in all meetings. And I'll give everybody epsilon. You get a little bit of robotics that isn't HRI, but all of it is, because no matter what we're developing, people are going to be alongside these robots. Brendan had the Spot robot here. We may not have been interacting with it in the way that you think, he was interacting, he was driving it, but people who are bystanders to these robots might need to understand, what are they doing? Is it coming near me? How is it working? So I think that's how I frame all the work that I do. So I'm seeing Mark over there. We do some collaborative work with Boston Engineering to help NATIC test exoskeletons. So we're looking at those exoskeletons, how they work with the human body. How do they help people, or how might they not help people? And how do we develop the best systems that, as those systems adapt, how does our brain, because we try to figure out what the system's doing, if it's adapting to us and we're adapting to it, where is that line and how do we design that? We're designing better human-AI interaction, which is also robotics, through our AI Institute, AI Caring, and we're looking in particular at how can we help people who have mild cognitive impairments and their caregivers to provide better care and to allow people to live at home longer. And that's a collaborative project with Georgia Tech and Carnegie Mellon. And I think that one thing I really love about robotics is it allows us to work with one another a lot more. I do a lot of work with WPI. We're trying to make robot manipulation better with an NSF grant. And how do we evaluate how robot manipulation works? That's going to be something that's going to then benefit, hopefully, New Balance. So I think that through our work at the Nerve Center and through kind of my take on how we're thinking about people all the time, it's really important. How do we break these robots? How do people break robots? We all know people break our robots. So how do we prevent that and make it, I guess, a little harder for them to break our robots?
Great, thank you. And you highlighted this, the work that you do with many other universities, and we see that across New England, right? There are so many universities that are doing great work. I know you guys do a lot of work with Brown.
Yeah, with Brown and Newick.
And so it's just, that's also great to see that that's happening. Ty, I didn't mean to leave you for last.
It's okay, Tom.
But
save the best.
We're good.
Okay.
We're good.
So for those of you who don't know Ty, he works at this small little company that some of you may have actually used called Amazon. And you probably have all had packages delivered from them. What you probably don't know is not only are they automating many of their facilities to improve that performance and service that they provide, but those robots are all built in Massachusetts. 100% are all built right outside of Worcester. And they are the world's largest supplier of robots. So to have that done here in the state also just echoes what Congressman McGovern was saying about the value of having a robotics industry here in the state. So I want to turn to you and just ask about how are robots being used, and then how are you interacting with people? Holly just talked about HRI. Obviously, that's an important part of what you do. You have thousands of workers. How do the robots interact, and what are they doing in your warehouses?
This is awesome, Tom, because usually I'm asking you the questions, so congratulations. That's fantastic. First of all, good morning, everybody. It's great to be here. It's a pleasure. Happy Halloween. If you're saying I'm dressed like an old, crusty nerd, that's just me. That's just me. So the question is how? How are we using our robotics inside of Amazon? Has really transformed the e-commerce, how we're using the robotics. We put people at the center of the robotics universe. really want to stress that. We build our machines, our job is to build our machines such that they extend and augment human capability. And when you do that right, you become more productive. And when you're more productive, what happens with, you reframe your relationship with machines. You allow people to do what they're best at, to think at a higher level, to focus on higher order tasks, to use common sense, to problem solve. And you augment them with machines to automate the menial, the mundane, and the repetitive. And we see that inside of Amazon. We have grown incredibly, really at an incredible pace since we've invested in robotics a good 12 years ago now with the acquisition of Kiva Systems, where we really went into robotics. We've created literally hundreds of thousands of new jobs. We've created more than 700 job types alone in robotics, so created new jobs. As Tom mentioned, when we're more productive, we need more robots out in the field, we need more people out in there. So besides jobs, we're also creating, physically building those robotics right here in New England. We have the world's largest fleet of industrial mobile robots. We have more than 750,000 of them, and every single one of them was actually manufactured here. And we actually create jobs, local jobs, that feed our manufacturing processes. We work with community colleges, we work with the amazing universities that we have here to actually, I believe, just create a very unique ecosystem when it comes to robotics. And our equation is really simple: invest in people. Invest in people. When you invest in people, you build better machines. When you build better machines, you allow people to do the things that they do really well. We have fully embodied what we call physical AI. So I know that there's some question we spoke about earlier about what's the difference between AI and robotics. It's what's the difference between the mind and the body, right? I can't really separate the two. We need both to do it really well. And the next decade for sure will be more about physical AI. How do we get intelligence into our machines to allow people to be more capable and more intelligent? So with that, Congressman McGovern also spoke about upskilling, and while I just have the microphone, I do want to just share how important it is to upskill our employees and our workers to get in early with STEM. Inside of Amazon, we have committed $1.2 billion in upskilling in 2024 alone for more than 300,000 employees, and people are taking us up on it. People are taking the classes and creating new jobs, all because of physical AI. So I think, I hope we're getting past the humans or people versus machines argument. It's super clear to us: more robots, more jobs, more productivity, when done right. And you really just have to reframe your relationship with machines when you do that.
All right, thank you. Should have had Ty start because he actually went through the rest of my questions. Now I'm stuck. So I do want to, you bring up a really good point. One of the things we get asked as robotics all the time is like, why do you support this? They take jobs. Robots take jobs. And we all know that that's further from the truth. I think the congressman gave a great example, and so I'll ask Martin to answer this first, but generally, how are you viewing robots and workers, and what is that, how is your company addressing that? And I think the congressman gave an example of surgeons actually having better opportunities to do their job correctly using your tools and actually staying in their careers longer because they're not burnt out. So I'm going to ask each of you if you could just comment a little bit about how robots and workers are interacting within your different areas, and then how do you see that going forward?
Yeah, thanks, Tom, for the question. Really good question. And in healthcare, and Johnson & Johnson, and I think everybody in healthcare, we're not really replacing any jobs. Everything we do with robotics is a robotic assistant. Everybody, like when people hear on the street, I had surgery with a robot, they all assume that there was some autonomous thing doing the surgery, but that couldn't be further from the truth. The robotics that we develop, all the robotics that's out there, it's really empowering the surgeon to turn surgeons into super surgeons. And the surgeons love it. They want to be at a hospital that has robots. In fact, hospitals want robots because that helps to attract the best surgeons. And robots can help, as we go to telesurgery, to solve the access problem, to provide access to everybody, even in underserved regions. But back to the jobs question. So robots don't take any jobs. They actually help grow the field by empowering the surgeons. And in my early discussion with Congressman McGovern, I shared also how robotics actually helps to keep people in our field. We have a lot of clinical staff and surgeons that leave the field because of high stress and burnout. In fact, a recent study shows that 35% of surgeons suffer from stress and burnout, and we're losing a lot of them. And if I've been spending a lot of time in operating rooms, and it's an incredibly chaotic, messy, loud, and cold environment with lots of beeps and alarms. And what we have to do is sort of a double challenge. We have to add more technology, but we have to do it in a way that brings down the noise, that brings down the complexity. And thinking back of my time at Disney, that's exactly what we have to do. We have to add an element of magic where we have to bring in technology that's the right kind of technology that disappears in the background. So we have to have smarter systems and systems that work within an OR ecosystem. And it could be, the technology could be disappearing, for example, when a surgeon is immersed in their surgical system. There may be a lot of technology, but it's invisible to them. It feels to them like there's like a tiny person sitting inside the human being and they're using their hands to do the surgery. That's like magic. And that's what we have to do. So robotics can help make the work environment better, have a better quality of life and work, and keep people in the system longer. There's also an application for AI that seems pretty pedestrian and it's super important. Like the number one reason people leave the nursing staff profession is, at least in the operating room, is unscheduled overtime. So AI can take over the complex work of scheduling dozens and dozens of surgeries. Big hospital systems may have 15 ORs, so each one has 6, 7 surgeries. They're all super complicated. There's instruments and staff, and AI can do a much better job alerting early, oh, this operation is taking longer or is shorter, talking to my AI buddy and schedule another procedure in this OR. And make sure that we're not telling a lot of people at 4 p.m. that they're going to have to stay until 7 p.m. when their family's waiting at home. So it's really a good story overall for robotics, and also high level in healthcare. We have a great lack of talent. We need people, just like in most other fields. I don't know where all the talk is coming from, robotics replacing people, and we have an incredible shortage of talent, nursing staff and surgeons in healthcare.
And Sarah, how do you think about that when you introduce robots to the factory floor? What are the things you consider, and how does that interact with employees?
Yes, so we try to stress that we are trying to make their job easier, not take their job away, but make it safer, make it easier, take out some of the guesswork sometimes of that. And once they realize that that's actually what's happened and their job has become easier, it's definitely makes our job easier of like introducing projects onto the factory floor. There's things in our factory that humans have to do right now, right? Like the robotic technology isn't advanced enough to do certain things on the factory floor, and we want humans to focus on those things and not on the things that are like kind of more mundane and that a robot could easily do.
And Ty, I'm really curious, 700 new job titles?
Some of our new job categories alone.
Talk
Yeah, just-
about, now that you've introduced robots?
Sure.
What are some of those jobs?
Well, I haven't introduced robots. Robotics has been around for a bit, but let's go with the numbers. I love numbers. I'm sure everyone out there loves numbers, so let's go with some numbers today. We shipped in 2023 alone. We shipped 7.5 billion packages, either same day or next day, and 80% of those packages went through our physical AI systems. Okay. That allows us to be more customer obsessed, more productive. People want their stuff sooner, and our robotics, coupled with people, allows us to do those jobs really well. And what we've seen in the last 4 years is actually something remarkable, where you can actually, I believe you can have it all. Again, this is how you frame your relationship with machines as augmentation and extension, is that we've seen our safety rates drop by 30%. So we have a better safety record over the last 4 years since we've really doubled down on automation and robotics. So it's a safer environment. It's a more productive environment. We have decreased our time, our cost to serve, which is a cost that we can pass along to our customers, by 25%. We have also reduced the amount of time it takes to process an order by 25%, all with the same physical AI philosophy where we extend and augment people. And what we have found is when you do that well, people embrace the technologies. And when they can touch the technology, they can see the technology, they can see how it's helping them do their job very firsthand, then it's this nice flywheel effect where our employees have a safer environment, a more productive environment, and they feel, and they're elevated to think at higher level. I think this is the future. Like, I personally think that is the future. It's not a future of replacement. It's not a future of like, okay, that job I want to go away. It's how can I make that job better using technology? And the part that I'm probably the most excited about, now that I'll share here on this Halloween, is first of all, I'm so proud of the women and men that I get to work with every day inside Amazon, because they truly are pioneers in applied robotics, right? It's actually doing robotics in an everyday fashion that actually has to work for those billion packages. And what I'm really proud about is that I think these pioneers, these young women, these young men, will not only revolutionize e-commerce, and we've seen that, but they'll also revolutionize manufacturing. They'll also revolutionize the healthcare space, the agriculture space, the transportation space, because what we're doing is that we're mastering the fundamentals of robotics right now. We're mastering the core elements that will allow us to put them together, and this is us. This is us, the tech community. This is us, the New England community, that will allow them to put together and transform new businesses, right? It's a big, big deal. If it was 1950s and I'm here in my tweed coat and I'm not, I'll be talking about the computer right now, but listen, you guys should really, computers, they're pretty good. I can see a future of computers. Like, I can see it. So if you have that disbelief, like, that's the analogy that I would give of embracing, of understanding what makes us more human, understanding how we can make our machines that allow us to be more capable.
So, leveraging off what Ty just said, I'm going to turn to Holly and Carlo. What are you seeing that's really exciting coming out of your students? What are the areas, focus areas? We already talked about Swarm, but there's so much being developed. What excites you coming from the students that you're working with?
Yeah, so being in academia is exciting because we understand robots as tools, exactly as all of the success stories that have been discussed so far. We resonate very much with it because we don't really see robots as an entity that is other from us, but more as a capability amplifier of people. And so I think about swarms all the time. So it's you and your little team of robots that will allow you to do things. But the point here is, with the students, one of the things that we do since basically the very beginning of our education with them is teaching them to think big about robots. So what are the big problems that you can attack that today would be difficult to attack, and then robots makes it possible to attack? Well, for example, environmental monitoring or any kind of environmental protection. Think about how difficult it is to map the ocean, and how difficult it is to understand, for example, the infrastructure that we build under the ocean. We don't know much about the ocean. We can't send people at the bottom of the ocean, but we can send robots. And so, for example, that is an application that today is, I would say, at its infancy, but we have a lot of people. There's a club at WPI that is just dedicated to right now, building the very first robot that can go as deep as possible, let's say, not so deep as kilometers, but the point is building a very, very capable robot, and then we can map, the bottom of, for example, the harbor here, if we manage to get there. So one of the things that really we try to think about is how to employ robots as tools that can, solve big problems. Another couple of examples, just for the fun of it. Medical robotics is ripe with example of this kind. Think about surgery. Think about nanorobotics and being able to deploy, for example, cancer treatment just in the place where you need it. No, for example, chemotherapy necessary. Just having robots that deliver what they need to in the place where they need to. Another possibility is agriculture. So there's so many opportunities, and the idea is think big, but understand robots as tools.
I'm going to amplify the sort of capabilities for people, but in a different way. So when you talk to people my age or a little older, They're all in robotics because of Star Wars and R2-D2 and C-3PO. And those are fantastic
Yes.
robots. But I think we're missing something. It's the bionic woman and the $6 million man that we should be thinking about more, right? That we can provide capabilities to people that, expand them past their capabilities they were born with, or if they've had an accident, or we can augment people who are already doing this to some extent. And to me, that's where I'm really excited about going. And I think that, Ty mentioned the computer he would have been talking about. Now we've got our phones, and what are the robots that everybody's going to have with them in a decade or two that are going to completely change their lives, and they won't even think about how to exist without them? And I think that that's kind of the exciting thing for me is where we go.
Point of order, Holly, I just want to let you know that R2-D2 jumped in the back of the X fighter when it came to, with Luke and the Death Star. So R2-D2 was actually back there helping Luke do the job.
I'm not saying R2-D2 didn't help, but I think that
I love good Jamie
the
Curtis.
tight integration. Look, I had an R2-D2 purse at the Robotics Gala a couple days ago, so I'm not anti-R2-D2.
We can agree on C-3PO not doing too much. We can agree there, but R2-D2, we draw the line.
All right, we're devolving a little bit into so I want to bring it back to the purpose of this meeting and just a final question for each one of you. As I said, I'm super excited that the Congressman is taking a leading role in the Robotics Caucus. He mentioned that he's looking for us as a community, this room, to talk about what should we be asking of the federal government. What are the policies we need? What are the regulations we need? What are the things that can be done? So I'm going to turn that to each of you. I don't know who wants to start. But what would your suggestions be to the Congressman? What do you think we should be doing at the federal level? All right.
I have ideas, but please go ahead.
All right, Martin, I'll pick on you.
Sure, I'll go ahead. Three things. I mean, first of all, at the very high level, we all agree we need this national robotics strategy. Just to get an agreement that robotics is important, and we need to have a strategy. I mean, that's sort of a no-brainer, and we keep talking about it, but we just have to do it. And it has to have all the components of a roadmap that survives more than 4 years, right? Because we need steadiness. It has to be bipartisan, and it has to have some longevity. It has components for talent. It has to have components for incentivizing industry to accelerate robotics and all of those things. Yes, definitely. The second piece is specifically for healthcare, but I think in general too. We need, I'm talking about the integration of robotics and AI. They all both have to come together. And I was thinking of the same analogy of the mind-body connection. The two are not separate, the two are one. And funding just AI is just funding a brain in a box. That's not going to do much. It's going to be thinking hard and thinking more. But anything we do in healthcare, in agriculture, and automation, you need to merge the two together. And it's not just the brain commanding the body, it's also the body informing the brain. The two, just like within us, has to be a very synergistic unit. So in healthcare, to succeed, we need both of those to work close together, and to train the AI is even a little harder than everywhere else because we need massive data. And the massive data today is a bit in a mess. It's highly segregated, it's in silos, it's in 15 different formats, it's owned by 5 different entities that all think they can make billions owning the data, and that has to change, and we need government to help regulate that. It's not going to happen by itself. And that has to be incentivized from the top down, and together with the strategic like J&J, and we're working on it and working with other big guys to do that. And that's the only way how we can get the data to inform the AI, to work with the robotics, to do all the great things we want to do and transform healthcare. And that has to do, the part two in lockstep has to be, especially in healthcare, data privacy. So we need a strong, coordinated national data privacy law. All the data flow is not going to happen with confidential patient data. So those are two big issues, and that's what's needed to advance healthcare. And the last piece is what we all have been talking about. I'm not going to belabor it. We really need workforce upskilling. As I said, we all say we need more people. And it's really, to me, the workforce upskilling is sort of the grease that overcomes the friction in terms of the demand and supply match. And it's, again, also a no-brainer. We have to do much more in terms of education and workforce upskilling. So definitely the high-level national security strategy, data and privacy, and finally upskilling. It's not that hard. I mean, it's hard, It sounds simple, but it's hard. But it's pretty clear what we need.
All right, that's going to be tough to follow. Anybody else want to take a stab at this?
I can add maybe a few things. I think of adoption, advocacy, and regulation. So first of all, I think just let us share our stories. I think all of us can share more of our stories of how we're using technology for good. I think that helps reduce the barriers for people to take on something maybe as complicated as robotics, but or physical AI. It shouldn't be. It should just blend into the woodwork. It should be very, very natural. And I would imagine that folks here in this room have their own stories of how technology has really helped them be more capable, how technology has allowed their employees to be more human. That's one. So let's share our stories. The second is advocacy, and we desperately need more advocacy when it comes to STEM education. We have to get our young girls, young boys really jazzed and excited about technology, because they're our future, and I truly believe that when you have some wicked smart people, which we have here, and you complement them with some wicked awesome technology, that you can actually move mountains. So we need advocacy for STEM. We need advocacy also for inside of New England, but also at the national level, right? We're doing incredible things here in this country, and I don't think that those stories are shared. And I think that that for more to advocate of what we're actually capable of and what we're doing at the congressional level will actually help a lot of people. And the third that I really am thinking about quite a bit is our regulatory environment, and obviously that is the role of the governing agency, definitely at the national level, and there's definitely a role for a regulation. Like I flew to Washington, D.C. just a couple weeks ago, and it was I'm in a tube with a whole bunch of people, and I'm glad this is regulated. Like I'm flying over New York City, I don't want to drop out of the sky, and I don't want to drop onto somebody, and regulating the airline industry was a really good thing. It actually helped people travel better all over the globe. But there is a time and a place when it comes to regulation, right? When I was on the plane, I'm thankful I'm in the tube, and I'm thankful that we're regulated, but I look out and I was sitting over the wing. Surprise, I know, I wasn't sitting up in the front. I get it. I have the same issue as well. But I'm looking at the wing, and can you imagine if in the 30s and the 40s that people were afraid of travel, airline travel, because you're up in the sky, and can you imagine that if Congress would say, I need to regulate the wing design in the 30s or the 40s. Can you imagine them saying, you can only use this material, it can only be this shape, it can only be this length? That would have really stifled the aviation industry. We would not be here today. And the analogy that I'm trying to make here is that we have to be very mindful about regulation when it comes to physical AI. I think we should take a sector-based approach. It should be a case-by-case approach. We should definitely look at it. Where there's existing regulatory bodies, we should look at that. But it should be a very thoughtful, case-by-case kind of sector-based approach, and not a one-size-fits-all. Because I'm afraid that if we do a one-size-fits-all, we're going to actually regulate our way out of innovation, and will not allow the amazing women and men that are working in physical AI, that are working in the high tech, to actually solve problems. So there you go. I got it out of my system. Thank you.
Thank you, Zoe.
So I think one thing when you're thinking about STEM advocacy, particularly in K-12, we need to move from FIRST and VEX and all these great programs being extracurriculars to being in the classroom. And that's how we get diversity and equity. When kids have to do it after school, you have to have the money to sign up for that program. You have to have the money where your parents can come and pick you up and they're not working a second job because there aren't buses after school. We need to move in the classroom. And that's hard because, of course, every town sets their own curricula. Every state does it. We don't have a national platform. But that's important for us to move forward as a country. And I think that's part of a national strategy that we need to think about. I think we need to be advocating for a new national robotics initiative that is, yes, of course, money for universities to do research, but we need to think about manufacturing. We see China right now developing humanoids with motors that we can't make here. We have the CHIPS Act, but we're not looking at making other components here. So we need to be thinking about how we're going to do that as well.
Great. Anybody else? Sarah?
Sure. Yeah, I think people have touched on most of the things. There's one that I wanted to highlight, that making it easy for us to experiment and kind of do the R&D on the industrial side of things. So Ty and I were talking earlier about the robotics task force that we were on, and one of the ideas that came out of that was having a physical place for people to go and do some of this kind of experimentation that doesn't really fall into research. It's like more applied than that, but it also, it requires an investment and resources that maybe all companies don't have. I think I've been really lucky that New Balance understands that this does take time, research and development time to mature, but smaller companies don't necessarily have that luxury. And a lot of my time is spent, there's this new technology and that new technology, and going around and trying to understand what works for our specific projects and problems that we're trying to solve. And if there's a place where we can go and be like, just try these out, I think that benefits both the people that want to use the technology, but also the people that are developing it, so that they can have a showcase for the technologies that they're developing.
Yeah, so basically everything has been said, but there's at least a couple of things that are worth mentioning. One is the fact that robotics is not an effort that is just related to engineering. It's a deeply interdisciplinary field, because it touches